Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues. In this video, I'll be discussing my thoughts on episode 6 of the anime series Noragami Aragoto. And holy crap, man. It all came to a head in this sucker right here with Kugaha and Bishamon. You know, it really kind of turned the tides from what I was expecting. I was almost ready to bank that by the end of this episode, Kugaha would have been quelled, whether by Yato or Bishamon herself, and by the end we would see her born anew, you know, much as was his intention, but without him being able to sort of hold any power over her like was his plan, essentially. And I even got to the point of thinking, you know, when you see this little girl and everything who's like, I want to just die. Everyone around us has been slaughtered. Bishamon is dying effectively, and she wanted to die because she didn't want to exist without the thought of her sort of mother figure, this goddess Bishamon, you know, being this parent figure to all of them and giving them somewhere to live happily and all this kind of stuff. I had almost begun to suspect that maybe this was already sort of a pre-reborn Bishamon, you know, something along those lines, where we would find out toward the end of the episode that her energy, you know, it was kind of like a Doctor Who thing where it was going to be a regeneration. The moment had been prepared for in that this little girl existed, and then Bishamon on her last legs would pour her energy into this girl and become sort of a hybridization, new, you know, incarnation of Bishamon. I didn't exactly know. And it just, as I say, what I think I found the most profound about this was the level of responsibility Bishamon was taking in and of herself. For everyone who was like sort of pointing the finger at her and calling her a stupid airhead for all this time, having this grudge, she had her family murdered. She would have rather sacrificed herself. I talked about all of this at length in a previous video, maybe a couple at this point, and it just was tantamount to me that she recognized her mistakes and she would rather live up to them and face Kugaha head on at that point. And she still, even being on her last legs, even being within inches of death, you know, and this rebirth, she was still summoning penultimate power to stand toe-to-toe with Kugaha, who turned out to be much more compelling than just the face value of malice that was every creeping moment of his character. You know, we see that he thought what he was doing was right and just, and that is the nature of all of the most compelling villains in fiction. You know, here is a guy who did not believe what he was doing was in any way, shape, or form the wrong choice. In any way, shape, or form was it malicious? Was it with ill intent? He didn't even understand his own sort of perversion of that idea of commanding a reborn Bishamon to be anything sort of like a failing to her and all this kind of stuff. And that is the utmost of a compelling nature in a character who is outright, to the viewer, villainous. But that's not the way he conceives of any of it. And it's almost like a level of catharsis for Bishamon to confront him and to take back that name and to basically banish him for all time. We even see at this point, it's almost like the thing he found the most corrupt in her, her sense of forgiveness, her sense of, you know, warmth and compassion, she uses this against him in his final moments by banishing him rather than slaughtering him. And I love that Yato was ready to do that. He slices the mother trucker's hand off and everything. He's like, look, you're a whiny little bitch. You know, mommy liked you best and you couldn't stand it anymore. That's why you wanted Cosmo out of the picture. He was better than you and you were always feeling, you know, unloved and all this stuff. You're a whiny little brat. And he put him in his place, but it was Bishamon who needed to rise and take responsibility. And she faced it with utmost power, strength, and courage internally, and a very sort of human, even though she is a god, a very sort of human grounded outlook. And this is all coinciding with Cosmo, who is, for all intents and purposes, dying, and going over sort of, you know, that whole thing about your life flashes before your eyes. He's experiencing all of this. And it almost seems to imply, as per many speculations that I've heard, that perhaps it was his own self-doubt in everyone at the time when he first was made a regalia for Bishamon. They were so unaccepting to him, and they were so, you know, consumed with why is he getting better favor than we are. We've been here longer and all this kind of stuff. Maybe it was, or at least he seems to feel that he might have been the forge that, brewed this entire blighting of old to begin with, which then saw him seeking out Yato. Maybe it was out of a sense of responsibility. Maybe he knew that he was the cause. It remains to be seen. I mean, it's still open for interpretation, and there could still be a chapter of Bishamon's past that we have yet to be revealed that might have been the actual cause. But at least this episode, his visions sort of building up to his own healing and sort of coming back to life, if you will, being brought to the brink of death and then coming back, it almost seems to insinuate that, at least in his mind, whether to be true, or to be found true or not, at least his perspective is that he was to blame. And he's carrying that guilt even in his waking up and seeing everyone happily ever after, sort of, the end of the Wizard of Oz. Everybody's there to welcome him, and, he's conscious again, and you have Bishamon completely, for all intents and purposes, healed by that point and looking just beautiful. The glow on her face and the smile and her the level of compassion bleeding off of her in wanting so very badly for Cosmo to resume his role as exemplar. I mean, she's practically begging him, because she feels incomplete without him. And that's exactly the way it should be. It's exactly how it should play out. They should make amends. They should, come back together in the aftermath of all of this. And it's really through the idea of adapting this sort of diary to, always keep all of these regalia, the surviving regalia, ever present in her memory, ever present in her mind. So she won't forget them readily in any time, to come in the future. And any doubts can be allayed. They can talk it out. They can feel it out. And she'll be ever presently aware of all of them, making them all on equal footing in a sense, with Cosmo being the beacon that sort of lights her own way, and vice versa. She is the goddess master, as he calls her, thinking of the days of old as she calls him on it. She's very much his own beacon of hope. And it was just like, it was a catharsis not only for the character, but I also felt like in how insane these last few episodes got with Kuga's plan. Coming to just the utmost peak of, Empire Strikes Back doom and this ominous unfolding. I thought all was lost a few times across these episodes. And here we have an actual happy ending that feels well earned. It doesn't feel like it was just sort of, Deus Ex Machina playing out of the story, where it just, it didn't make any sense, or it didn't feel like it was well earned. This was exactly the opposite. It felt well earned, and I felt a sense of relief. And I even was chuckling, when you see everybody in the flashback of everyone healing, and you have Kuroha sitting there, the lion dude with, the animal thing around his neck, so he's not scratching at his beard or whatever it is. I lost it with that. And it really was a sense of purification by the end for Bishamon, for Cosmo, for the surviving of her regalia. And I really find myself desperately curious to see, as we get into following episodes, as I'm led to believe this is the Bishamon arc, air quotes, from the manga, which I haven't read, obviously, coming to its sort of end and moving on to the next arc in, the story. I'm really going to be curious to see, providing she's still around, she's still involved in the story, if she becomes more benevolent, in sort of her interactions with Yato and everything like that. Because it almost seems like for the both of them, the understanding everyone was saying 2 episodes, 3 episodes back should have been taking effect by that point. It was much more well-earned through the process of this story, through the unfolding and figuring out of who was behind it and what was all happening and why it was all happening. I feel like it was a much more natural consequence by the end of this story, this episode, for it to reach that point. And I'm just really dying to see how their next interactions are going to go. Are they going to be friendly? Is there still going to be sort of a playful, adversarial nature between them? What exactly is it going to be that, Yato sort of moves on to next. Will he have gotten Hiyori back to her body in time? Will that still be something that's up in the air? You know, all this kind of stuff. It sort of gives us the hint in the PV for the next episode that maybe he will finally be sort of moving around to this idea of being a god to be worshipped and thus never forgotten and all this stuff, not being dependent on Hiyori. But of course, before we get to that, we have a post-credits sequence, which is just utmost compelling, with Nora, of course. This malevolent little troll, a former regalia of Yato himself, and manipulator of Yato himself, who wants nothing more than to be all-consuming, the one and only thing who can claim Yato for her own. And yet, there's even more to it. Bring Yato here, she says, to someone off-screen, and then she refers to whomever this is, God or otherwise, God, demon, whatever it is, as father. And it's like, damn. Get us to the next episode, now. I'm just like, this had me reeling. It had me completely reeling. Loved the playing out of this story. Loved seeing the characters I really didn't want to see facing a penultimate, end. Kazuma, Yukine, hopefully Hiyori. Hopefully we'll get that in the next episode. We'll see her fine and dandy back with her body and everything like that. But Bishamon herself, Yato even, just, it was utmost compelling. And to see sort of, I guess what you could call the central nervous system of Bishamon's regalia having survived. So many were lost, and it's heartbreaking in the effect it had on her, but it was sort of the tipping of the scales in Kugaha's master plan that penultimately failed. To not expect that Bishamon would be able to sort of open herself to this awareness and take responsibility for it, and turn that compassion and all those things that Kugaha found so disdainful and so reprehensible against him. It's just absolutely compelling, majestic, And so I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below what you thought of episode 6 of Noragami Aragoto, if you've seen it, if you enjoyed it as much as I did, because damn, just all kinds of damn this episode. And if not, why not? Let me know in the comments below. I love having the conversation with you guys, even if our POVs happen to disagree. So, yeah. Otherwise, bring on the next one. That'll be pretty much it for me on this. Hope this video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.